Hello. Hi. Hope this video finds you well and that if not, hope that at least you can be open after it. So the topic that I wish to share about tonight is in regards to vulnerability and being vulnerable. So I guess the only place for me to start is with my own journey as to what I feel that looks like and the role that it's still playing in my life today, and also being wise about guarding one's heart, because there's wisdom in both. Growing up, I had a lot of traumatic experiences in the home, not being able to find a safe place or a safe space to really share what was going on with me. At the home, mostly my interactions with my mother were uh, heightened emotional states where I really wasn't able to share how I felt about things. I wasn't able to share kind of what was going on with me. It was kind of like, you just have to do this and deal with it. Then, unfortunately, um, the leadership that was giving her advice from the church in which we attended just told her to that she's not being harsh enough, that she's essentially the parent, and you know, just give him more rules, things like that. So that created in me a disdain for authority and mostly women in authority. Um, and probably whenever I was 10 or 12 years old, I was exposed to pornography in almost a backhanded way. Um, my curiosity as a kid got the best of me, right? Which is pretty indicative as to why religion and telling kids not to do something or not to think about something, they're going to think about doing that thing in which you told them not to do. They're going to end up thinking about that thing which you told them not to think about. Um, and to think that kids are naive or stupid, or they just, they're not going to be able to handle whatever information, is also not right. So essentially, my friend of ours was deleting spam emails from my parents' email inbox. I guess my parents didn't know how to do that, and the word pussy came up, and everyone was like, "Oh," like they made a big deal about it. And I, being inquisitive, was, "What's that?" "Oh, don't worry about it." So later that night, I went down the computer and I looked it up, and I was exposed to a whole world, a whole mindset that totally perverted my thinking in regards to how to think about women, and that began my journey of objectifying women and only seeing them in a certain light. At times, it wasn't always the case, and I hope that even whenever I share some of these struggles, you can take it with a grain of salt and know that, you know, hopefully that just because there was a mindset or belief that really influenced the way that I thought, and it was really no one's fault. Maybe just a lack of a safe environment to share what I was dealing with. So I harbored a lot of these thoughts and feelings, and I wouldn't share. But to finish my point, I hope that you could see things objectively and try not to judge me for the things that I share or say. Um, so that, and once I got caught by my parents, I was taken down to the leadership, and I was, it was me and other leaders there, so I was pretty much outnumbered, and everyone had, not so nice things to say about me. And rather than seeing I was just a curious kid who didn't understand, the female body or what I was delving into, I was pretty much condemned and judged and pretty much told that, you know, no other female at the church would want to speak to me if they knew, that I was looking at watching porn. So that caused me to go and draw inward and to really allow a lot of thoughts to ruminate in my mind about myself, shame, condemnation, guilt. I had no ability within myself to free myself from this thinking. At the time, I didn't know that, I don't have to trust and believe every thought that I'm feeling or I'm thinking. And I had no one to direct me on how to deal with some of the anger that I dealt with. So there is value in being vulnerable, but obviously, with the story that I just told, these are these are echoes of my hidden past that still come up. And granted, these are things that I've told to others who I trust and trust their counsel and I trust their wisdom. I told in confidence these things, and I've been exonerated from a lot of those false mindsets and perverted beliefs about women. And granted, whenever you start acting upon some of those thoughts and some of those feelings, the neurological pathways get tied stronger and stronger and bound stronger and stronger to these habits, right? That you think about these things and think about women in this way. So you look for those outlets to find this release. Whenever you continue to act upon those things, you're binding stronger and stronger these neurological pathways, which dictate your thinking patterns and your perceptions, and um, it's harder to get out of that way of thinking and believing the more you act upon those things in which you're thinking and feeling. But thankfully, through the years, I've had many women and men be able to give me wise counsel on helping reveal to me the truth of who I am and the truth of who women are, and the beauty that they encompass. And, I'm not going to lie and say that it was completely eradicated from me once I got married, because it wasn't. And, there were still things I just was struggling with and at times chose not to look at. I chose not to expose myself to another, especially not to my wife, because of, shame and guilt and fear and other things. But this is the part of being vulnerable that there's a fine line, because, there are those pastors and leaders and those counselors, those light workers, in which would love nothing better but to use your counseling session with them as a Sunday morning sermon. And that's the truth. And they'll just totally forget about the sins that they've been forgiven of, or the things that they currently do struggle with in their life, and act as though they can now judge you or condemn you because you're being vulnerable about something that, obviously, if you're struggling with it, it's not indicative of who you are. Well, you've acted upon it. Well, you did it. You did this. You did that. Thank God for the gospel. Thank God for Jesus Christ and for other light workers and those who profess a true and clear message of who we are, which isn't indicative of any performance. Whatever we see going on in our environment, how we perceive ourselves in this body, what we do in this body, is there's no permanence to it. What we see in our circumstances, in our environment, there's no permanence to it. So for me to rely so heavily upon my performance, whether good or bad, is going to have me living like this, up and down, up and down. Because according to the world's standards and systems, you can never have enough money, you can never achieve enough, you can never be good enough. And in our society, if you make a mistake, you're forever tattooed with a scarlet letter. Thank God for the gospel, which exonerates all of us from those mindsets and those belief systems and declares us righteous and true and whole and holy according to God's perspective. Now, that is objective. That is the one call for all. One's calling is the calling of Christ, which is to co-identify oneself with God. Righteousness is two parties finding likeness within one another. And that's what God wants. He wants us to see that we are his children. We do come from a divine DNA and a divine nature. Now, with that being said, obviously, we have echoes of our hidden past that we refuse to look at. We refuse to acknowledge that we once knowingly or unknowingly participated with that because of lies, of guilt and shame, and because of the inability to express oneself to a sane, loving, caring individual who knows that you just made a mistake and it's not true of you. And that's where being vulnerable is important, where you need to definitely expose those lies of and the echoes of our hidden past, because we've all had trauma and we've all been exposed to some type of sexual trauma, whether something's been done to us, something's been shown to us that it wasn't right or true of um, the human body and how to treat it in regards to a healthy sexual relationship. Um, and religion just suppresses. Don't talk about it, don't look at it, don't share. Even though once you actually touch that thing and expose it for what it is, you see that it's not real, right? And even science is affirming that a lot of times when we recount certain events, because the mind is creative and imaginative, what we do when we end up telling our story is it's not always indicative to what actually happened in that moment. That's why we can't trust guilt. Because even the thing that you're thinking about, even though it might be somewhat, maybe 25% true, it's not actually true of the actual event that happened. And that doesn't leave the person off the hook. Obviously, they're suffering with some type of guilt and shame. The more we just repress that and we don't create healthy outlets for people to share based upon the fact that people can't just have a conversation and hold things in confidence and not run and tell and publicize, you know, conversations held in confidence. Because we can't do that, and we don't have healthy outlets, then people don't want to share in there. They just put on this smile and everything's positive and happy go lucky and all that. And that's just fake. That's just sugarcoating everything. And um, I want raw. I want real. And raw and real doesn't mean you're on Facebook sharing to the world your whole entire life, because that's not wisdom. There's a lot of people that I don't trust my stuff with. And I think that's wisdom. And I'm still learning this balance, between learning how to be vulnerable and real so that it can help others grow and be freed from that stuff, right? But if we suppress it, we just act like, nothing's happened to us, then that evil will come out in our life in other ways. And I've seen it, I've seen it in my life. So really, I think it's wise and to find those individuals. So just be ever listening. Find those individuals who you can share these echoes of your hidden past with, and know that whenever you expose it to another individual who of light and life and love, they're not going to do anything but embrace you, and tell you they love you, and tell you that you're loved, and tell you that you're free from that. And it might take once, it might take twice, but forgiveness is not about pardoning another individual who's wronged you. Forgiveness is about removing those things within us that is causing us suffering. Whenever you feel like someone has wronged you in some way, whether they've done something to your body, your reputation, however you perceive your little self, because that's the only thing that truly can be offended, is the little self, right? So once you actually look at that thing for what it is, you can see that it's not real, and you can stop identifying with it, and you can stop allowing it to dictate and manipulate your future decisions. So through deep breathing practices and meditation, one can alleviate that stress. One can renew the mind and the synapse and the cells and the brain cells, and the neurological connections that one has previously had. And through guided meditation, one can see a life in which they are free from those things. Not just co-create with the Ruka, the feminine spirit of God, that thing that where vision and revelation, both in the feminine tense, those things in which we perceive and sense, we can then perceive and sense them and then watch them happen right before our eyes. Because we've chosen to say, I'm not going to allow every single thought and every whim of doctrine that enters my thinking to dictate to me who I am or whose I am, right? And I'm not going to allow the trauma of my past to cause me to continue to hurt myself and hurt others and be angry and bitter No, I'm going to look at it for what it is, right? I'm going to do that work of being responsible for that in which I'm feeling. I'm going to expose it. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to reveal and be revealed and be vulnerable to the God in which has created me, and participate in life and with others in community, and be real and vulnerable about those things, and be open to not hold on so tightly to my trauma or the stressors in my life, and start to confess different things, start to internalize different things. And this takes time, and this happens in a peaceful community. And if you don't have that, maybe there is an individual. If you don't have an individual, I'm offering myself to you so that you can share what it is that you're suffering with and what it is that you've gone through, so that I can help you grow in some way and help you see the truth of who you are. Because once you really see it, see oneself as the way that he sees you, or she, the divine DNA, sees you, it will be forever a constant metamorphosis and evolution, up growing up into that greater revelation. Whereas we then get to adhere to and trust and melt into that true revelation of us. And things just begin to recalibrate once we connect back with the Ruka, the breath of God, which is the movement and the rest that I have with my environment, and the electrically charged environment outside of me, and realize there's also an interplay with that also sustains my inner life. We start to be true gardeners of our soul. We start to weed out some of that thinking, and we stop, putting out fake flyers. Yeah, fake flyers, fake flowers. Yeah, hi. Everything's positive and happy, and you know, well, Father, I thank you that there is no condemnation in Christos, and I am in Christ. Christ is my life. He showed and revealed to me the beautiful relationship that I have with the feminine spirit, and she revealed to me how I can be my sister's keeper, how I can see my body and my sexuality as something that is sacred, something that I can enjoy in my monogamous relationship with my wife. I thank you for your goodness that leads me to that radical mind shift to lay aside all the weights that ensnare my thinking, And Father, I just ask that you'd supernaturally touch other other minds of individuals who I've wronged in the past, who I've used for my own satisfaction, use those relationships specifically for my own satisfaction, God. And I pray that your sweet spirit, who's never left us, never forsaken us, the one in which you sent to comfort, the one in which you finally revealed in us, I ask you reveal her in us even more, and you guide us to those individuals or those communities which we can be vulnerable with. God, and you would make us wise on knowing who we can trust and who we cannot trust with those sacred parts of us. Help us see that it's very simple to not hold one's wrongs against them, because that's simply indicative of the nature in which we were birthed from, and that's love, true love, not a anemic, tolerant love, but a true love that holds the truth of humanity in one's hearts constantly, regardless of whatever acts or practices individuals are engaging in that aren't indicative of the truth of who they are. If they're not using their instrumentality in a way that serves them the best, or in a way that helps serve their fellow man. Help us to see that Anana, the I within the I, is the greater self. It is that self in which I am. That is the way. That is the truth. Once that's revealed within us, this true I, and I can see that this I gets jacked up and completely intoxicated on serving humanity, on helping my brother and my sister be set free from the echoes of their hidden past, and to know that they are to echo the divine DNA from which they have come from. Father, I pray for the ears of the hearers, that we would awaken to the message of Christ within us. I pray that if this resonates with individuals, that they'll feel the freedom to reach out to me personally, and that they'll feel the freedom and the openness to search out individuals, even counselors, that they can confide in, so that they can see that those thoughts that want to hurt them aren't the truth of who they are. Because you have worth and you have value. You were meant to be here for such a time as this. We are the ones we've been searching for. Thank you, Lord. You're blessed with all blessings.